Hi, I'm Tom Elliott, founder of OcuRoute, and I'm pleased to be sponsoring this podcast. If you need help taking control of your CI/CD pipelines, come see us at ocuroute.com.
Hey, it's Dan Melnick. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Zing, and I'm proud to be a sponsor of this podcast. So please check us out today as we can help fuel your business growth. myzing.io. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Matt Little. I'm the Director of Counselling and Education at EmpoweringAwareness.asia, and I'm a proud sponsor of this podcast.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Firstly, thank you very much for giving me opportunity to interview you for my podcast.
Of course, my pleasure.
So I have gone through your profile. I can see you have done a lot of work in the industry, and I can see you have been in different roles and took different responsibilities and worked in different places. So I thought to tell about your work to my audience.
Oh, of course. Yeah, happy to. You just maybe I can just tell you a little bit, about myself and my background. So I'm currently the CEO and founder of a AI company called Certivo. Certivo essentially is an AI-powered platform for compliance and regulatory management, specifically targeted towards manufacturers. So essentially, we help streamline the entire process of getting you compliant with various governmental regulatory frameworks, such as ROS, REACH, PFAS, Prop 65, etc. And we use an AI first approach to be able to do so. But I've been in the tech industry for the last 20 years. This is my third CEO gig. Prior to this, I was the CEO of a private equity-backed company. It was mid-market tech in the collectibles industry. Prior to that, I was the CEO of a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ called Caspian. I've also been in big tech. I've been a general manager at both Amazon and Microsoft, ran multi-million-dollar P&Ls there. I've also been in the entrepreneurial world. I was the chief operating officer for an esports betting company called Unicorn. I was also one of the first few employees at Groupon. At the time, it was one of the fastest growing startups in the world, went from zero to a public offering in less than 4 years. And in a prior life, I was a software engineer. That's how I started off my career, and then transitioned into building tech businesses through my MBA from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. I also have a master's in computer science from Clemson. Yeah, all in all, just a tech operator, loves building, scaling businesses, and loves commercializing them. Really taking the lens of product first, customer first. That is my general philosophy and approach to tech. Yeah.
So why you're doing what you're doing now?
Certivo specifically. So I mean, we are at a sort of a crossroads in the technology industry, where the proliferation of AI, exists in a way that interesting problems that couldn't be solved, many years ago can finally be solved. And, things that, were maybe harder to do, a few years back because of the proliferation of AI, across several across the board, the ability, the accessibility to several models and the improvement in those models day in and day out now present to us several problems that couldn't be solved before, and now can be solved. And that's a classic case of, at least in my industry, what Certivo is. The whole process of getting to compliance is a very painful process, in the sense it's all handled through a lot of collaboration with suppliers in a supply chain. You have to send emails to suppliers, you have to get data back from the suppliers, you have to analyze that data manually. The data comes back in the form of PDFs, it comes in the form of surveys, it comes in the form of emails. And being able to analyze that data, parse that data, centralize that data, do analysis on that data was a harder problem in the past. But today, with the proliferation of LLMs, that seems to be a much more easier problem for us to be able to solve. So, being able to automate compliance as a process was a harder issue a few years back, but today now we can actually create a product, create a piece of software, etc., that can do those. And so that's one of the reasons why we built Certivo. Why Certivo exists in the industry is to help streamline these very complicated workflows across the supply chain and be able to centralize all the unstructured data across the supply chain into a centralized platform that Certivo provides. So yeah, that gets me excited. I'm very excited about where the future of AI is, the applications of AI, the applications of LLMs, and sort of problems that, like I said, were very difficult previously are now seem very possible to us.
So with Certivo, which industry is going to get benefit more?
So we are focused on the manufacturing industry, and that's our core sort of target audience. But within even manufacturing, folks, segments that are more regulated and have more regulatory oversight on them would benefit the most from Certivo. So you can think about automotive, industrials. You can think about medical sector, pharmaceutical sector, energy. So any sector that has regulatory frameworks that are associated with it, any industry in a manufacturing sense, that you can't sell into a particular market if you don't adhere to those governmental regulations that require that require all the checkboxes there. Those would benefit the most from Certivo. So yeah, I would say manufacturing, of course, is our bread and butter, and then within manufacturing, any industries that have a high oversight on regulation.
So is there any particular project or experience that made you to actually start this project?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've been in the of course in the tech sector, but also in supply chain and distribution and e-com and retail for the last 10 years. So, my experience at Amazon got me a lot of exposure to the retail industry, to the supply chain industry, to distribution and how that works. The last two CEO positions I had, both had had major components of retail distribution, warehousing, et cetera. And all of them had components of compliance. I had compliance teams that would report to me. So I got a first-hand look on how these teams operate, what their workflows are. I got a good sense of what that looks like. So I knew the pain points, I knew the challenges. One other thing that I'll mention is this is not really an operational issue that we are solving for. We're also this is a strategic growth issue. So if you think about it, getting to compliance means that the faster you can get to compliance means the faster you can sell in that particular market. So it's revenue that's left on the table that you're not capturing right now. To enter into a new market, you need to understand the regulatory framework of that particular market. And so it's opening up new market access opportunities for you. And then finally, it's also a risk management issue. For me to stay in a particular market, I need to make sure that I'm always compliant. It's sort of like an insurance at some level. And so, taking into consideration all that, you have a critical problem in a manufacturing sector. It's revenue left on the table. There's opportunity left on the table. You have workflows that are manual. There are workflows that are antiquated. You have compliance teams always bogged down, frustrated, always being the bottleneck in the entire sales process. And so, we interjected ourselves into that particular segment of the supply chain and felt that was a big opportunity for us to be able to, go ahead and capture. We also looked at, the competitive landscape and what's out there and, what tools exist and the proliferation of AI and what's happening in the industry. And we found major gaps there as well. Essentially, no one in this industry is solving for what Certivo is doing right now. And all the tools that exist in the industry are very antiquated, old school. They're big, bulky enterprise software, very expensive, and there's no intelligence, automation that's built in. So yeah, taking into consideration all those pieces, that's what sort of, where Certivo fits into the market landscape, at least today.
So what size of the business can use this uh, tool and get benefit?
So typically, we I hate to use this, but in general, any manufacturer, whether you're small or you're an enterprise, you'll get benefit from Certivo. But what we have seen that our sweet spot is typically a mid-market manufacturing company. And why? Because once you start growing as a business, and now you start hitting a level of scale, you're trying to sell more into a market, you're trying to expand into multiple markets, you're introducing new products into the market. So you've hit that sort of growth curve where now compliance starts becoming a bottleneck. Now you have to hire more people, you have to add more people to your team, you have to train them, you have to bring more compliance engineers on the team. They all need to have a specific skill set. And so instead of doing all of that, you essentially can bring on Certivo onto your team and says, well, let Certivo help you manage a lot of this process for you, fully automated, and it really empowers your existing engineering teams, or empowers your existing compliance engineering teams to be able to manage compliance better. So yeah, I would say everyone can get benefit, but mid-market and up is likely where you will see the most value, because that's where the spirit of automation, the benefits of automation can be seen a lot more directly.
So because of Certivo, I mean, using it, it is replacing humans. Is there any quality difference in the work?
Yeah. So I don't call it replacing humans as opposed to empowering humans. I look at it that way. So think of Certivo as more as it's a assistant on your team that is helping you as a compliance engineering team, a compliance manager, becoming more efficient, becoming more faster, becoming more automated. A good analogy is for, I'm sure we've all heard of Cursor, which is an AI development tool for engineers. So just like Cursor gives the engineers, software developers wings and helps them become more efficient in their coding, helps them speed up their process, automates a lot of what they do day in and day out, and empowers them to produce better quality code, faster code, better, cheaper, faster, right? The sort of the three components of a good startup. And so that's how we think about Certivo as well. We're essentially making you better, we're making it cheaper, we're making it faster for compliance teams. So we're more of an assistant to compliance teams. But by that logic, as you rightly said, we're not replacing humans, but the need for more humans reduces, right? So I don't have to throw more people at the problem. Just like you don't need, in the previous world, if you needed 10 software engineers, today you likely don't, right? You need maybe 5 or maybe 4, because you have all the AI tools. It's the same case with Certivo. Is essentially we're giving you wings in a way that you don't need as many people in the future, and the existing teams are are empowered to be able to move faster, and we do that cheaply, and we're doing it much better than anyone else out there. So that's one. And so that's sort of how we think about the world. Now, to answer your other question around the error rate, yes, there is an error rate. The AI is not perfect as well, so there is going to be some error rate. What we have tested in our product is our error rate is better than the human error rate. So there's also an error rate with humans as a whole. So as you can imagine, the compliance engineer is also not perfect. They are also making mistakes. They are also running into issues, etc. And so our error rate is much better than what the typical human error rate is. It's certainly more faster. But more importantly, we also have a component of a manual compliance engineering team that we have sitting at the back. So after the AI does its work, our manual team also oversees that work and checks it for accuracy. So we close the gap for any error rate that we see there through a compliance engineering team that spends about, the last 10%, the last 15%, anything that we see, any errors there, that team sort of interjects itself there. So it's a combination of 80 to 90% AI, 10% manual, and that's how our package is to our customers.
Can I say all the roles that you have been in the past, are helping you to be very particular and see things accurately today?
100%. I mean, there's a lot of experience that, certainly I've had, good and bad, and I think they all contribute to, experiences in the future, right? And so, for example, this concept that I just mentioned to you around let the AI do 80 to 90% of the work, 10% is done by a manual team. I've had that. I've seen those. I've seen those in other companies, in other cases where you can't depend completely on AI, or you can't depend completely on technology. And the other way around too. Sometimes you don't want to just become an agency and then start
Yeah.
essentially throwing only humans at the problem. So being able to find these sort of use cases has come from some experiences that I've learned before and failed before, etc. So yeah, 100%. We all improve in life through the experiences that we have. They're all learning opportunities for us, and you take them and into your next positions, and that's exactly what I've done too.
So, what's your take in general, on human and human connection with the advanced technology called AI?
You see, my perspective is that it's a blend and a merge. So my perspective on teams of the future is that the teams of the future are going to be a combination of humans and agents, and we have to now adapt and be okay with this new world that we are all going to live into. So your ability as a team player to work with agents effectively is going to be a critical skill of the future. The folks of the future shouldn't be worried about losing their jobs because AI is going to replace them. They should be worried about their jobs if they are not able to use effectively AI in their jobs, or not able to interact very effectively with with agents in their job. And so the more, and I tell people this as well, like, the more you start adopting AI into your daily workflows and make it part of how you operate your business or your role, and how efficient you can be through the use of AI, the productivity benefits that you get through the use of AI, the speed to which you work, relative to maybe your peers, all that is going to contribute to, how successful you become in the future. So for me, that's the interaction model is essentially team will be full of agents, assistants, autonomous, some sort of maybe co-pilot like, and then you have humans, and then they are going to interact very well, and that's going to form the foundation of deliverables for a particular team. I also see a lot of humans doing a lot of high value work in the future, and a lot of the low value work being essentially outsourced to agents. There's really no reason, like I said in Certivo's case, for a compliance manager to spend his or her day all day trying to open up PDFs, read them, analyze them, input them into a spreadsheet. That's what the AI can do. So there's really no reason for you. Instead,
Right.
the compliance manager should really be focusing on strategy, should be focusing on, which new market should we enter into? How do I put a compliance plan for that particular market? What compliance frameworks we should be tracking there? So you start moving your job from, hey, I was reading PDFs every day, to now I'm thinking about, how can we increase revenue for the company through the lens of compliance? And so that's how I think the shift is going to happen, or is already happening rather right now.
So, when you actually started Certivo, and who are your users now, and what they are saying about this?
So we started Certivo last year, so it's been about a year or so since we've been officially in market. We've raised capital as well from venture capitalists, and we've been working with several customers, since then. So yeah, we've got feedback all across the board. The the positive feedback, is, we love automation. This is going to save us hundreds of hours. I'm inundated with my work, and a tool would really help. And being able to read complicated documents very positively and give me results is amazing. And so we see a lot of the feature feedback in general, like that's very positive. This would help us with getting our compliance workflows fully streamlined. That's another thing that we hear all the time. I also want these new features, and there's asks for new features as well within the platform. So yeah, there's tons of sort of just positive feedback on the direction we're taking, etc. But at the same time, there's also some skepticism as a whole. And
Yeah, we lost for a bit.
sorry, we lost for a bit. I'll continue. Yeah, there's also some skepticism, right? With oh well, can we trust the AI, for example? And what happens to my data with the AI if you're going to talk to OpenAI or GPT, or you're going to call some like external model. So there's some concerns around security. There's some concerns around trust, and those are obviously objections that we have to handle. But by and large, the feedback is very positive. One other thing that I'm seeing in the industry side, just for your benefit, for your viewers' benefit, is the adoption of AI as a technology has been way faster than what I've seen in other technology waves in the past. And typically there's always the early adopters of technology, and then they wait for a period of time, and then over time it'll slowly proliferate into the rest of the industry. But in the case of AI this time around, everyone is jumping on the bandwagon, and there's a lot of pressure from board of directors, from CEOs, to push AI into an organization because of all the benefits and the advantages one can get from it. To my point around, if the team of the future is really a combination of people, humans, and agents, they don't want to hire 10 people tomorrow. They want to hire 5 and 5 agents. That's a much cheaper proposition for a company as opposed to hiring 10 employees tomorrow. Employees are expensive. And so, being able to sort of, so there's a lot of push from the top around, having organizations adopt AI a lot more faster than what we have seen in the past because of the potential benefits that it gives, teams and companies. And so that's also an interesting trend that I'm seeing, is just the adoption has been a lot more faster, and the openness to adopt has been a lot more faster.
You have seen the technology evolution since you was working on software till today as a business owner. So how do you define this evolution, and how can you predict and expect the future in the advanced technology that you are working on, which is artificial intelligence?
Yeah. See, it's always hard to predict the future, to be honest. Then we can make predictions, and they almost always come untrue of some sort, or there's always some changes based on based on research going on, based on governments, based on regulation, based on political events, like all that stuff, right? By and large. But yes, I've certainly seen many waves. Saw the cloud wave, saw the app wave. Certainly now we're seeing the AI wave. And like I said, the one thing that I've seen that's very different this time is just the adoption has been a lot more faster. Adoption has been a lot more quicker. The openness to adopt technology has been there, and compared to what we have seen previously. The advantage of AI is that the deployment of AI is a lot easier than what we have seen before. The ability to build applications that are AI powered, the ability to be able to utilize AI quickly into your organization. I mean, all you need is ChatGPT, right? I mean, you start with ChatGPT and you can start becoming efficient. But in the previous technology waves, someone had to build an app, and we have to transition all our on-premise data into the cloud, and that's a big cost to an organization before they can start adopting something new. But in this case, hey, the adoption is straightforward, right? You can start using and becoming productive tomorrow as an organization just by giving ChatGPT licenses to all your employees. And that's an easy way to get started. So I think the adoption curve is going to reduce significantly, and we're going to see the proliferation of AI in every day-to-day industry, into every day-to-day operation a lot faster, and that is going to be a critical sort of I think change in the industry. The other prediction I would say is 100% we're going to see people work on more high value jobs. AI is going to replace a lot of the old jobs. It's going to create new jobs, potentially new types of roles. We've already seen roles like prompt engineers, agent managers. I don't know if you heard of that one. That's another one that's coming up. Like, hey, we need someone to manage all the agents on the team, and we need some sort of an agent manager. So there'll be new creation of new jobs as we see some jobs eliminated as well. But and that's how disruption happens in industries as a whole. So I think there'll be some of that. The dynamic of the team, the dynamic of how people think about themselves, how they operate, is definitely going to change in the future, in my view.
So you're solving problems of humans uh, by making them use this tool and help them in increasing their productivity. So how different it is from actual humans?
It's not. I mean, it's different in the sense, and it depends, right? It depends. So, and the reason I say that is because there are tasks that the human does today in my particular use case that involves a lot of what the agent is doing today. So what we are saying is, if here's what a human does on a day-to-day basis from a compliance standpoint, and there are 80% of these tasks that they're doing that can essentially go away to what a agent should do, and their focus is really on that 20% on today. And you should focus a lot of your attention on the 20%, because if you put more of your attention on that 20% and expand your tasks to not just 20%, those tasks to not only 20% of your time, but to 80%, 80% of your time, and the remaining 20-30% just do in managing of those agents, the amount of value that you can create in aggregate relative to the cost profile is going to be significantly more than the value you're creating today. And I think that's the way we sort of differentiate between the human plus agent connection and the human only connection, is in terms of value creation relative to the cost profile. And that's where the big difference is in how we see the ROI of essentially AI. And that's how I sort of like differentiate it. Is there's the high value tasks and the low value tasks. The high value is a small portion of your day. Let's increase that to a lot more. Let's increase the low value tasks to a small portion of the day, and let's outsource that to an agent. And that combination will create significant more value for an organization.
When you're building this product, what kind of complexities that you have observed, and how did you resolve it to make it perfect?
Yeah, there's a lot of complexities. I mean, we have to deal with, documents that are, hundreds of pages, thousands of pages. They're very unstructured. Being able to analyze that data, read it. The AI has to operate on that data, has to do it quickly. We have to do it at scale. If you think about an average manufacturer, the mid-market manufacturer, they have thousands of parts that they're dealing with, hundreds of products that they sell, hundreds of suppliers that they deal with. So there's tons of documentation that's coming in. Sometimes the documentation is handwritten. And so you have to, the AI has to be able to operate on all that. Otherwise, if the AI is not able to do that, then to the point that you made, or we made, that the compliance manager is essentially going to say, well, you're making me do all the low value tasks in any case. Even with your AI, I have to verify everything. So imagine having an employee on your team who is doing all the work, but the manager has to check the person's work all the time, and confirm everything. So the manager is going to say, well, why should I hire this guy or this girl if I have to just do their work or I have to check all their work all the time? So you want that employee to be productive, and you want that and similarly and independent, and they can do things autonomously without having the need to oversee them as much. And so that's how we look at the relationship between the human and the agent as well. The human is really there to oversee parts of what the agent is doing, but the agent needs to be more autonomous as much as possible, and at least over time become more and more autonomous. So I think that's one technical challenge, right? It's not very easy to sort of handle that. And then imagine you're doing that at scale. Imagine you're doing it across a supply chain. You have multiple tiers. This is not an independent. Why Certivo is complicated because it's not just one product for a company. When you deploy Certivo to a company, you're also dealing with their suppliers. You're dealing with their customers upstream. So it's like you're dealing with a multi-tiered supply chain. There's data flowing across the supply chain, and it's all unstructured data. And so that's what gives its complications. You're moving from a singular focused product into something that is across multiple tiers of customers. So our users are not just the users of Certivo. There's the supplier, there is the customer, there's all these folks across the board that all have to coordinate and collaborate across the platform.
So it's been an year you have started this. Did you learn anything?
Oh yeah. It's learned a lot. I think one big thing that I'll mention to you that I learned is, especially as a software person and a person who's has built products, etc. There's a new code base that is now created that also has to be managed, and that is the prompt engineering code base. So a lot of AI is, a lot of our IP is how well we do prompt engineering as a whole in the company, and across all the several LLMs that exist out there. So that's one big learning is, as we think about AI powered products in the future, it's not only your typical cloud backend, front end, software as a service. Those components exist, so we have to do all that as well. But now you also have this element of prompt engineering, and that code base has to be maintained, and you need the right people to work on that. You need AI engineers, prompt engineers, etc., who have a specific skill set. So from back-end, front-end applications, now we have back-end, front-end prompt, right? So we have like sort of three components or three legs that we have to also think about. Costs are another thing that we have to worry about, and at least think about very carefully. How many calls are we making to different LLMs? Who's giving us the best bang for a buck? Who's doing the best work relative to the cost profile of the calls? I mean, how many calls are we making to them? So we have to think about that too. So it's not just cloud costs that we had previously, or those costs. Now we have to think about prompt engineering and LLM costs as well. So those are things that we have to kind of keep an eye out of. So the team structure changes, how we are deploying changes, the code base changes, and so all those things now are slightly different in this new world.
So this is more into the supply chain and solving the multiple companies' problems. So what about data protection and security in this process?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, good question. Yeah, that's, I think, very important. So, and how any company, irrespective of Certivo, sort of manages this entire process. So yeah, we take data security very, very strict in the company. In fact, even though we're a younger company in terms of our evolution, we have put in a lot of processes in place and to ensure data security from day one. So number one is, first of all, we are SOC 2 and GDPR compliant. So we have followed all the processes for what it takes to be SOC 2 and GDPR compliant. So that's number one. That gives all our customers, they're very clear on hey, Certivo has taken the steps to ensure that your data is managed through a official certification that is an industry standard. Number two is we deploy separate environments for all our customers. So no data is shared. Everyone's environment is its own environment. We don't have a shared sort of SaaS-like environment that everyone can just log into. So it's a isolated environment. Number three, we clean up all the data that is required to be sent to an LLM before we send it to the LLM. So the LLM will never know that this is coming from a particular customer and this is their bill of materials or this is their parts, data. So there's no way to reverse engineer that, data, because it's all fully cleaned up, and we only send the required data to the LLM before it comes back to us. So yeah, creating isolated environments, making sure that only the right data is cleaned and sent to the LLM. Number three, ensuring that we're SOC2, GDPR compliant, and whatever those frameworks are just examples of the things that we do. So, but yeah, it's very important that we keep, data security in check, especially because we're dealing with sensitive data from our customers.
So what your users are saying after using this?
I mean, they love, I'm biased here, but they love it, right? I mean, it's like, like I said, at the end of the day, they give us feedback around, hey, look, Certivo is better, than what we are doing today. We're doing things manually. Number two is it is faster because we're doing it at scale. You are going to take 2 days to read a 300-page document. Certivo or our AI will do it in a few seconds, maybe a few minutes. And so it's better, it's faster. And number three, it's cheaper. If you look at any other software on the market that's doing any sort of compliance, you're paying them, hundreds of thousands of dollars before, you can get even 1/10 of the benefits that, Certivo provides. So we are cheaper. So at the highest level, it's better, faster, cheaper. That's the feedback that we hear, from our users consistently. And, that's what we continue to focus on. And that's where we believe that the power of AI is as well. It's, it can help companies become and our teams become better, cheaper, faster. And, and that's exactly what we are focused on. And we see that feedback consistently from our users. How do we, you're making me better, you're making me faster, and you're doing it a lot more cheaply than, hiring people, etc.
Did you see any unexpected error?
Oh yeah. We certainly see, case 100%. And like I said, AI is never 100%, going to get you there. It's not going to be 100%. At least today, it's not fully 100% automated. And although our vision is to be a fully autonomous and, an agent that's essentially working completely independently, today it's not there. It's 100% not there. So you see errors like, sometimes there's a long document, it'll read the parts incorrectly. Maybe there's a handwritten document sometimes. We won't be able to read the supplier names correctly. And so, so like I said, it gets you 80 to 90% of the way there. The last 10%, there will be some issues. And that's why we have a team of people that sits behind and also monitors. So in case the AI sees some sort of error, which is unexpected, we should have read this, that the team goes in, they'll fix the data, etc. So there's this combination of humans and the AI working together at this stage, with the goal that eventually it becomes fully autonomous and it can work independently. And we have enough training done on the AI that it's able to understand, hey, I saw a handwritten document last time, and now I understand what change needs to be made, and like this time I'm going to correct it on my own. So it will improve and learn over time, just like an employee on your team would learn over time. So it's no different than that.
So tell me about your team who built it and how they tested it.
Yeah. And we have a team of engineers here my headquarters are based in Seattle, my office here. So we have a team of engineers here in Seattle. We've also got a team of engineers in India. We've got, product folks, we've got some sales and marketing folks as well that help us. And essentially we're also, one sort of thing to mention to, you and your audiences, we also are spin out from Pioneer Square Labs, which is a premier venture capital firm and a startup studio here in the greater Seattle area. And so the company was incubated along with them. So we have the entire team of Pioneer Square Labs also available. These are engineers, designers, venture leads, like other folks available to support, Certivo at any point of time. And the third player on all of this is essentially a Fortive, which is a large Fortune 500 company. So they also are an investor in Certivo, and they are also one of our customers. So, the team is a combination of engineers, compliance folks, and industry folks. So these folks all came together, and so our test. So that's the team that has built this product from scratch, working with our customers. Now, to answer your question around testing, it's a combination of several things, right? Like, there's testing that's happening through our customers that's giving us feedback. There's testing that's happening, through our compliance engineering team, like I mentioned to you, that they are consistently testing the product. They're looking for errors, they're looking for bugs, they're looking for issues as well. And then there's obviously the more traditional testing that you see with, engineering teams that are doing their unit tests and integration tests, etc. So there's the technology and product driven testing, there's customer driven testing, and then there's compliance team that we have essentially internally that is also testing the product. So that's a way in which we consistently ensure quality. We ensure that there's that the AI is improving for the future, and it just gets better over time. So it's a combination of those things.
So you are observing the industry, you are observing the supply chain, and you're observing the market, and you are observing the constant change that is happening uh, in the businesses. So what do you think that is going to be more challenging, and that you take to solve it?
Trying to think as to what different than what we have already spoken about so far, but I think like I said, the what we are seeing in and I'm being very specific to my industry, or the industry changes a lot, right, and changes very fast. So you can imagine, like you're seeing this, we are seeing this in the world today. Now we have all these tariff situation that's been caused by some of the political situation globally. Now that's a change that happened overnight. Tomorrow there is some regulation that's going to be announced in some country. That's a change that happens pretty much overnight. And so there's a lot of changing regulations, changing policies that affect manufacturing sector globally. And any software's ability to be able to adapt to that very quickly is going to be the differentiator between winning and losing. All the other softwares in the market, or the more traditional softwares in the market, by the time they introduce a new regulation, it's going to take them like 2 years. But in the case of Certivo, new regulation comes on board, we can, in less than a week, we can train our AI, we can, introduce new UI workflows as needed, and we're essentially ready to launch. So the ability to be able to adapt to changing conditions is also a big advantage of how Certivo operates, as opposed to, again, like the more traditional way of building software. Well, I have to, it's like a new product. If a new regulation comes on board, it's a new product for us. We have to go through a requirements process. We have to understand the workflows. We have to build a product, blah, blah, blah. That's how the more traditional approaches. But in the way we have done it is we can adapt very quickly to any changing conditions out there in the market. And the software, in fact, is able to train itself. It's able to adapt automatically. And with a few changes to our UI, UX, we are able to launch very quickly. And so I think that's the big difference that, at least we're seeing. And we have adapted our way of developing Certivo to these potential changing conditions that are going to happen all the time in this industry.
So this is very adaptable.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's very adaptable. It's not only adaptable to the existing regulatory frameworks, but like I said, anything new that comes on board, it's very easy for us to be able to train our AI to any of these changing conditions, and be able to quickly map out any new workflows that are needed, and be able to support those new conditions to our existing customers, as well as new ones that want to come on board. So yes, 100% very adaptable, very scalable. Like I said, initially, from the perspective of, doesn't matter if you have 100 parts or you have 10,000 parts. the core framework sort of operates, in the same way. It's just the ability to handle, more documents, etc. And how do we do that at scale? So yeah, very adaptable, very, very scalable.
Did you do research before making this perfect?
Oh yeah, 100%. We spoke to, my research is talking to customers all the time. So before we even launched Certivo, we talked to several customers. We understood their workflow. We understood, what issues they're having, what improvements that they'd like in their existing workflows, what tools they're using, what is just how do they operate every day, how important this issue is for them. So we not only talk to our target users, we talk to CEOs, presidents of companies, we've talked to VP of operations, just for them to get their perspective as well. How do you think about compliance? Why is this an important problem for you or not? Not only talking to the target users, but also talking to the other core stakeholders, in terms of user of in terms of just people who care about the business, etc. So we talked to several of those, got a lot of insights, feedback from them. Then we built a prototype of the product. We used that prototype to go back to those customers. We got feedback from them. We showed them, here's how the product would potentially look. What's your feedback? So we got a lot of feedback on that. We iterated with the customers multiple times. Then once we felt comfortable that this is the right product for the market, we built a proof of concept. So we, to check whether the AI is able to do what it's claiming it can do. So we did that. Then when we felt comfortable with that, we then built an MVP. Then from MVP, we went to general availability. So we had a very structured process in how we built the product. And we didn't write any line of code before we spoke to 50, 60 customers. We got insights from them, feedback from them. We showed them prototypes, just done in Figma. And we got a lot of insights from that before we wrote a single line of code.
So you have already done this role previously. Now you are in the same role. So how good you are as a businessman and as a person who is into building a tool. So how you are able to integrate the market and the business requirement with the engineering thing.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I was in the same role before, just to be clear, because I was the CEO of two other companies, like I mentioned, and both those companies were more mature companies. So they were already in the market. They had already millions of dollars in revenue, and one was publicly traded, on the Nasdaq. The other was like we had raised, over $200 million. So it's like very different scale, and.
Yeah.
But in Certivo's case, it's early stage, right? Like we're sort of reimagining a company from scratch, and we're thinking about workflows from scratch. We're using an AI first approach. So the general philosophy doesn't change. The general philosophy of, hey, I need to keep my customers always first. I need to understand their pain points. I need to understand their workflows. I need to understand, where the gaps are. I need to understand where the true value creation levers are. I need to understand what the existing competitive landscape looks like, what the cost structure is there. I need to understand, how big this market is. So the general philosophy doesn't change, right? It's just how you're approaching the problem changes, where you have an existing customer base, where you have no customer base, and you're trying to approach them. So I've always taken that perspective of, the basics of business don't change. You keep your customer in the loop, you solve for the customer, you create value for them, they'll pay you, period. And that's it. And you build great products for customers and they'll pay you. And if you're truly solving a problem for them, whether you're $100 million company, $1 billion company, or you're a $1 million company, it really doesn't matter. And so that philosophy I've always taken with me, and I've applied those principles to Certivo at the end of the day. And it's in fact one of our values as a company. We are customer obsessed. We have 10 values in the company that we push, to every new person coming in, to our existing employees. And one of them is, customer obsession. We always keep and go above and beyond for our customers. And so by keeping that philosophy of customers first always, I think has at least helped me navigate all these roles effectively.
So, how do you think the business will evolve? Because you have already done a lot of work. So, how do you think the business will evolve?
Yeah.
What are the challenges you face? And how do you think the business will evolve?
So
So when you are interacting with business leaders and these supply chain businesses or the experts, uh, did you got this compliment that you are thinking beyond and as a visionary, as a technology visionary, and giving them the forward advice that will help them in their productivity even in coming years with the tool that you built?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we see that a lot because not only is the so one thing I've also learned and I've realized with a lot of like working with people is they are looking to work with partners